Anyway, interesting idea. Okay. V'daber Hashem el Moshe b'har Sinai lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai, saying, Daber el b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem, speak to b'nei Yisrael and say to them, Ki tavo'u el haaretz, when you come to the land, asher ani noten lachem, that I am giving to you, v'shavta haaretz shabbat lash. Let the land have a Shabbos, basically. Okay, Shavta means like Shvita. Unfortunately, we're very familiar with that term here in Israel. Stop, right? A cessation of whatever it is, in this case, work, and that is like the definition of a Shabbos. Okay, and in this case, you can actually just jump right down to the Rashi, right? Rashi says Shabbos LaHashem means L'Shem Hashem. Okay, that you're doing it for Hashem. It's not. It's a like by doing this, you're kind of making a statement that even though this is really the basis of every single mitzvah, this one becomes like the poster child, sort of, for this is, I'm doing this completely for Hashem. Okay, and the Kli Yakar actually helps us to understand that. We don't often bring the Kli Yakar, but I love this one. So he says, Omer ani, I say, Sheta mitzvah zo, ki lehashrish et Yisrael b'midat ha'emunah. That the whole purpose of this mitzvah is to embed in Am Yisrael the character trait of emunah. Okay, that it's like an injection of emunah, and it's also I want to actually put this out there that this whole exercise of Shemitah is really like a training ground, a training exercise of emunah. That's really what Hashem is giving it to us for. And I think in that way, you know, we do Shemitah, like kind of, okay, like in the way that we can at the moment. But even in the years that we don't have Shemitah, we read Bahar, and we're not actively doing the mitzvah, but learning about it is also this way of internalizing and embedding the midot, the personality attribute.
From me, very much. Do it, but it's very hard when you have small children around, right?
Yeah.
And so we would do it, I had to mix it around. Some people keep it as kedushat shvi and some people not. But like I try to do it as best as I can without having to rock the boat. And this year I said to my husband, I said, I'd like to start learning maybe the halachot to do it better, because the next time we have to do it, I feel like I'd like to take it upon myself in the house here, as much as we can try to keep kedushat shvi. And I said to myself, I'm not judging and saying, because there's plenty of chayulim that we've lost that haven't and have fought. But I found that the frontline people that I saw that were fighting in this war were a lot of people that very much follow in line with Rabbi Mona, and that she taught that he keeps. And I felt that he's very, very makpid about keeping Kedushat Shvi'in. I felt like when you love the land so much, you run out to fighting to try to keep it.
Wow, beautiful.
So I don't know if anybody here knows of any great book.
Rabbi Mon's book is the best.
Because I know something that's in English and help me learn the halacha. But
I think it's been translated. I'm almost positive that it's been translated.
It's in English?
Yeah.
I'm looking for it.
Yeah, Rabbi Mon's book is the book to get. And his daughter got married last night, so to Ziv Abelo. So it's good that we're bringing his name up, and they should have a very happy marriage, healthy marriage.
You could pick anything else this time in this Purshas.
But you've been thinking about this linked to the war.
Interesting. It makes me feel even more connected to trying to do it.
Wow. Okay, I'm so happy that you said that, because that'll be now in the background of our hearts as we learn this year. Okay, ve'habitachon b'Hashem, and like emunah and bitachon, right? And the first line of the Kli Yakar still. Yeah. And remember, a few weeks in our last year, I quoted Rabbi Label Wolf, who said, right? And I just love that definition. He said, Emunah is believing that everything that has happened to you until now has been like seeing and knowing that it's from Hashem and it's for your own good, right? That's Emunah. And bitachon is having the trust that that will continue going forward, right? That everything that's going to happen is also from the hand of Hashem, and it's also for our good. Ki chashash HaKadosh Baruch Hu pen bavoam el haaretz yit'asku ba'avodat ha'adama al haminhag hativ'i. So Hashem Kilu had like a worry, a fear, okay, kavyachol, right? That when Am Yisrael would come into the land, they would get busy with the land in the way of like the rest of the world, okay? Like a farming book that someone puts out, that's how they'd be like, oh, let me go to Barnes and Noble and, get, or whatever, we live in Israel, so Amazon, and get the most modern book on farming, and I'll do it according to those laws. And farming is mamash, like we see from the very beginning that there's so much emunah. Like farming is itself a training exercise in emunah. I mean, we don't necessarily connect to that so much, but like it used to be so dependent on the rains, right? People, the way that we say, v'ten tal u'matar livracha, or mashiv haruach u'merid hageshem, like all these different things, and we daven for rain by Sukkot, like that was like considered whether the people were going to starve or not, right? This is, thank God, it's not really our situation anymore. Drip irrigation and all the technology, and we have motors, and that can, we have different ways of gathering water now. But like back in the day, it was all about looking up to Shamayim and trusting that Hashem was going to make the rains fall. And that was our food, our survival was totally dependent on that. And that's really what Hashem intended it to be. Meaning farming is meant to be an exercise in emunah.
Right now we see also because it's the owner and it's the counting of the owner.
Right. Right. It all builds on itself. Okay. So he was worried that we were going to like fall into this like, do it according to nature. V'kasher kebir matzah yadam yishkechu et Hashem v'yasuru bitchunam mimenu, and that they would, forget about Hashem basically and turn their trust away from him and onto something else, which is a pretty fair fear for Hashem to have, considering that that's pretty much what most people have done. Right? And they would think that it's all because of their efforts. Oh, I plowed so well. I planted so well. I had the timing correct, right? And rather than thinking that it's from Hashem. Do we not have enough? 9. Oh, we need 10. Okay, good. More. Ve'olam keminhago noheg v'yachshavu sha'aretz shalahem hi vehem haba'alim ve'en zulatam. Okay, and the way that the world thinks of it, of land and farming and the world, is that it belongs to us, and I'm the master over it, and I cause it to grow. Right? That's pretty much. I mean, think about any business. Right? Most people in the world, when they put their effort into their business, and then if it succeeds, they take all the credit for the success. And if it fails, unfortunately, they also bear all the brunt of the responsibility for the failure. But it's a totally different thing than Yiddishkeit, right? In Yiddishkeit, our daily exercise is to say, this is from Hashem. Whether if it's successful, it's because it's for my own good to be successful right now, because Hashem trusts me to use the money in the right way, and it's what I need right now. And if it's not successful, then it wasn't meant to be successful. I mean, obviously the hishtadlus is the same. The amount of effort that we put in, obviously we have to plant and we have to plow and we have to, or the other way around, whatever. But right, we have to do all those things, but we can never ever think that it's from our plowing and planting that the crops grew alone, right? We had to open the doorway to enable Hashem to, like Rabbi Shais Taub always calls hishtadlus Hashem's alibi, right? Like Hashem's really just sending you the bracha, but you have to go and buy the lottery ticket so that it can't just be stam that, the $1 million comes to your door, right? You have to plow and you have to plant. but it's really whether the food grows is from Hashem. Al ken hotziam Hashem min haminhag hativi legamre. Okay, so Hashem took them out of the natural way of doing things completely. Ki b'shesh shanim derech ha'umos la'asot shnei shanim zera v'shana achat bor kedei shelo la'kchish chila. Okay, so the way that like farmers used to do things in the rest of the world was that for every 6 years, the way that it would be broken down was 2 years of planting and 1 year of laying fallow. And that was like the cycle. I guess it's a 3-year cycle, not a 6-year cycle, right? Because Baruch Hu Amar, shesh shanim tizra sadcha. And Hashem says, no, 6 years you should plow and plant. Midei shana b'shana ve'ani mavtichecha lahosif kocha shelo taklish. And so do it every single year, right? Oh, I don't know why I put the period in there. Amar shesh shanim tizra sadcha midei shana b'shana, right? Plow and plant every single year for 6 years, and I will put strength in the soil so that it doesn't weaken. Okay, meaning in the natural world, I mean, I'm not a farmer, right? Okay, but in the natural world, there's like minerals in the soil, and the concept is that for 2 years, the minerals that are in the soil have the ability, the energy to nourish and sustain the crops. And then the minerals have been like taken out, diminished. Yes, thank you very much. Depleted, diminished. Okay, and therefore you need to let the land lie 1 year fallow for them to replenish, and then you start planting again. So Hashem says, no, don't do that. 6 years, every single year, you're going to plant, and it's going to grow, and I'm going to sustain it so that it. You have an extra copy. Oh, you took an extra. Okay. I'm like, did we learn this already? Okay, no. Sorry. Okay. Shelo taklish, and so that it won't weaken. Ve'od nes betoch nes shachar shezarata shesh shanim, and he's going to make a miracle within a miracle. Okay, so already for 6 years, it's not like the normal way that the land is going to be able to give food, and Hashem's going to add another miracle onto that, which is im b'shana shishit lo yakchish chila. Hine l'chol ha'pachot lo yosif la zekoach. Amar Hashem adarabba shebeshana hashishit yosif la koach kol kach ad shene'emar v'tziviti et birchati b'shana hashishit v'asa et hatvua l'shalosh shani. Right? So Hashem says, I'm going to add another miracle. Not only am I going to make the 6th year not weaken, but in the 6th year, the crops that you collect for the 6th year are going to be able to sustain you. That land is going to be able to feed you for the next 3 years, right? Because you're not planting and you're not plowing and planting on the 7th year. So that's a year that you need food for. And you're not, because you didn't plant and plow in the 7th year, right? Or you're not collecting, you're not like collecting whatever in the same way in the 7th year. And then you're not plowing and planting in the 7th year for the 8th year. So then in the 8th year, you don't have what to eat, right? And it's only in the 8th year you plow and plant, and you have in the 9th, okay? So the 6th year is going to feed the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year, which is amazing, right? So Davka, when we think that it's at its weakest point, Hashem is going to show you who's in charge, okay? That you're right, it's not the natural way. This doesn't work anywhere else in the world. In, the fields of Iowa, where they're growing corn, they can't let the land lie fallow the 7th year and expect that the corn from the 6th year and whatever they collect in this, whatever grows wild in the 7th year is going to feed them for the 7th year, and the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year. They can't do it. But here in Eretz Yisrael, this is what Hashem is going to make it. And we're going to see it with our own eyes. Okay, but part of that is that we have to believe it, right? We have to actually do that. We have to actually actively refrain from plowing and planting in the 7th year. Yes? It's cool, no? Very cool. Okay, so you see how this is like a training ground for Emunah, right? I mean, Hashem gives us every 7th day that we have to have off, right? That we have to refrain from work. Now, there was a time in America, right? We've spoken about this before, when at the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, when Jews were coming from Russia, Shomer Shabbos Jews, and there was like no understanding whatsoever in the factories on the Lower East Side, particularly, or in any job on in New York at the time, particularly, that Jews take off, Saturday, Shabbos, right, and are happy to work on Sunday. So no, the factories were closed on Sunday, but they were open on Saturday. And there's so many stories of people whose bosses told them, if you don't show up tomorrow, meaning Saturday, then don't come on Monday. Also, you're fired. And people literally got fired every single week from their job. Such Mesiras Nefesh to keep Shabbos, right? And there's this element in that, right? Because you have to have emunah that you're going to get another job on Monday. You have to have emunah that your family's going to have, something to eat, right? And anybody that really, and we hear stories also in other times in other places of anybody that starts keeping Shabbos and they're worried because Saturday was their biggest day of sales, and we see that when it's done with the right mindset. I mean, Baruch Hashem, there are many stories of people who said like actually overall when they closed on Shabbos, overall their sales increased. God knows how that happened. God knows how that happened, right? So, but these are the ideas that we actually have to tap into that. We have to hold on to that. We have to trust that that's actually the case. And if it doesn't happen, then there's some other reason why it's not happening. It has nothing to do with it's not a bad thing to do. It's always a good thing to do. And we just have to have that, trains us to know that Hashem, our parnasa comes from Hashem. It doesn't come from our own magical formula of what we're selling. Everybody's very quiet today. Okay. Kedushas Levi, Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditcha. What does he say specifically about this Shabbos LaHashem that we're doing it L'Shem Hashem? He says, "V'zeu et shiptotai tishmeru." Okay, so Reb Levi Yitzchak brings in last week we had the mitzvah of Shabbos repeated to us again. Okay, and he says he combines these 2 weeks, and he says, "Sheyu Yisrael nochim b'Shabbat lo b'shvil menuchat avodatam." Right, that Bnei Yisrael, we know that we don't rest on Shabbos for the natural effect of resting, has on our bodies. We need it. We're working and we need a day of rest, this, physical rest. It happens to also be that, but that's not why we're doing it. But rather the reason that we do it is because Hashem told us to. Okay. And the same thing is true here. Lachrosh sadeh shana echad v'laniach bor shana bet. Okay, so he says it a different way, that it's the way of the world to plow and plant 1 year and to let it rest fallow the second year. Kedei sheyeh yafeh lehotzi hazera, so that the land will stay strong in order to have those minerals to grow the seeds. Al zeh bama amar Hashem yisparach v'shavta haaretz Shabbos laHashem. And on this, Hashem comes and says, no, do it this way instead. A Shabbos for Hashem, meaning the 7th year. Shevishnat hashmita sheishbot haaretz lo tiyeh hashvita mechamat tovot haaretz. So that we know that the 7th year, letting the land lie fallow, it has nothing to do with it being good for the land. Rak Shabbos laHashem mechamat tzivui Hashem yisparach. But rather because it's Hashem telling us, this is what I want. Now, embedded in that is this ability to say, actually, there's something even deeper when we know that there's something we don't understand about it, right? It's beautiful. The Rambam is, at the forefront of this, of trying to explain to us the mitzvahs, right? And that's beautiful because we want to, when something has meaning for us, then it's more meaningful, right? It enables us to keep it in a deeper way. But it's always, always, always important to go back to the reset button and say, okay, this is a piece of the reason, but really I'm doing it because Hashem told me to. And there's something much, much deeper in that I don't understand, that's going to actually fill me in a spiritual way. When I keep it this way, it's going to connect me to Hashem in a way where the not knowing is actually more beneficial to me than the knowing. That's what he's saying here. Does that make sense? You raised your eyebrows, Etsy. What do you mean? Yeah. It's interesting, right? It's faith. That's exactly right. And it's so important for us that we should know in our lives that the more we let go and let God, the more we'll understand about what we actually do understand, and the better it will be for us, right? It's like a counterintuitive, right? Everyone in the world thinks that if I understand everything, then I'll have more meaning in my life. And really, the way to have more meaning in your life is to say, I can't understand everything. And I'm going to honor that and back away from that and say, I'm just doing it from a place of faith. That actually gives a person more meaning in their lives. Okay. So that's why I titled this year "Holding On by Letting Go." Okay, because that's really the concept. Like it's pulling back and saying it's not all about me. I don't understand it all, but I'm gonna keep on going. Okay, the Yitzmach Moshe, Reb Moshe Teitelbaum of Uchel. I was zocha to go to his kever last September. My husband went to Reb Shaila in Budapest. It's right there. Okay, Hine. You know what? Wait, I think that already scanned wrong. No, Nizuno. It's supposed to be a Zion. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Hine Nizono. Excuse me. No. Hine Nizonu Yisrael Bamidbar Baman. Okay. So I love the man. It's like one of my favorite topics to ever talk about, right? That Am Yisrael were nourished in the midbar with man. Okay? Man is so super cool. Vihi ashkacha gluya. And that was revealed godliness, right? The man came down from Shamayim. It landed, I mean, there's lots of different midrashim, but it like landed, in the right distance to a person. Sometimes it landed up people's doorsteps, right? It doesn't come down on Shabbat. This is like very, very obvious to their physical eyes that it's from Hashem. Right? But Hashem knew that the man was going to stop as soon as they come into the land. Because also if he continued it, then the man would become something regular. Yeah, it would be like, whatever, the man comes down from Shemayim every day, blah, 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 Okay, the fact that it stopped is what helps us like feel so excited about it, right? Because we know that this is not the natural way of things. It was for this particular time period, the 40 years in the Midbar, and it had these, super awesome supernatural characteristics, and then it stopped, right? Okay, and Hashem stops it so that we can choose to understand what it really was. Okay, he enables us through stopping it to really see it for what it was. V'hine kafi hashkafa yira'eh shenetku mimazon haheshkechi lemazon hativi'i. Okay, so it seems like we see that Hashem stopped the mazon, the supernatural mazon, okay, and he switched over to a system of natural mazon. That's what it looks like, right? Okay, we say, right, the coolest thing, right? What was the bracha for the man? Hamotzi lecha minha shamayim, right? And we never ever make that bracha. So we're it stands out in this place in our hearts, like, wow, that is so super cool, right? But kanir'eh, it seems like hamotzi lecha min haaretz is like the natural order of things, right? And it seems like Hashem switched from this supernatural system to natural system. Aval be'emet ze'eno. But really, we have to have a paradigm shift. Just the same way that back then we were sustained by this miracle, supernatural food from Hashem, this divine food. So too, we have to understand that our daily bread, right? Our bread that we buy in Papa Melach or in Rami Levi or wherever or the Makolet, wherever you buy your bread, right? It's exactly the same miraculous thing as the man was. V'ken me'ata ve'ad olam. Now and forever. Rak ha'hefresh she'az v'hashgacha gluya ve'achshav v'hashgacha musteret u'me'utefet. Right? But then it was very revealed to us that it was miraculous food. And now it's wrapped up in this like clothing of nature, right? The laws of nature are that if you plant a seed in the ground and you water it and you give it sun and, you let it grow, then it will, bear the wheat. And then you grind the wheat and you mix it with, water and eggs or oil or whatever it is. And from that you make bread. And that's how it works. That's what the system is. That's Mother Nature. Chas v'shalom, right? Mother Nature is another way of saying Hashem, right? Hashem makes it that way. Hashem makes wheat. Hashem makes it grow. Hashem makes it have the characteristics that can turn into bread, right? And it's exactly the same supernatural food as it was, as was the man. It's just that now Hashem kind of set it into place in a more regular, systematic way. And so that's revelation wrapped in daily habit, let's say, right? Or daily like cause and effect, seems like that it's like the laws of nature. And Hashem wanted us to like see this really, that it's really the same as the man. And that's why, right, there is still somewhere, right, one more tzinsenet of man, right? It was in the Moshe Rabbeinu brought it was in the Beis Mikdash, right? That there was this one jar still of everlasting gobstoppers, right? Everlasting man that will show us, someday, what the man looked like. But kind of what he's saying here is that like that man that still exists is sort of like the battery of like that Hashem put into place as like the paradigm to help us tap into the fact that all food is really supernatural. Okay? And he says, this is actually the reason for Shemitah. To show us that this sustenance, these crackers, this bread, this wheat, this everything that comes from the planting the land is exactly the same as the man. And the same way that the man didn't fall on Shabbos, so too the system with fields and with planting is that on the seventh year we don't plant, we don't receive really in the same way as we do the rest of the years. Okay, to kind of set into our minds, oh, this is actually the same thing as the man. The same way that the man didn't come down on Shabbos, so too every seventh year, the Shabbos of the land, we don't plant and plow.
The last year, don't like when Shabbat reason for this or
yeah.
Right. That was also the thing they say is that you just should wash for a kazayit so that when you go into the week, that the miracle of getting your sustenance is coming all from Hashem. Right. So it continues even into the week. Beautiful.
I have this thing. I don't. This is a no judgment zone, right? But basically, I recently realized that I'm like quite addicted to sugar and carbohydrates, and I've been reading a lot of stuff about brain fog and about getting tired in the middle of the day, and so I decided to do something very, very drastic, and I'm trying to cut out, like at the moment, all sugars and carbs. So, which is very hard to do, obviously, but all of a sudden it came to Shabbat, to Friday, and I was like, boy, what am I going to do? Like, first of all, I make challah every week for my family. And it's like, and I normally eat like, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. Okay. It's really yummy. And right. It's okay. So, so I said, like, if I wash, then I'm going to eat bread. Like I'm going to eat it. So maybe I just shouldn't wash. But then I asked the Rav, and the Rav said, no, you have a chiyuv to wash. You have a chiyuv to have 2 sudot, but 3 sudot also. But like, okay, fine. There's different things about shalosh shudas, but 2 sudot lefachot, and you really have to wash. Like if it's a sakanat chaim, then obviously, right? But then you don't. But it's not a sakana time for sure, not for me. So he said, look, see what you can do. See if you can wash and take one bite, and that's it. So I thought when you were speaking just now, so Baruch Hashem, I actually did that. I'm very proud of myself. Thank you. But as you were saying that, Hindi, I was thinking like, it's actually very important, right? It's very important. Bread is called mazon, right? Meaning a Suda is not a Suda without bread. Bread is like the paradigm of food. Like what you have to have to survive is bread. And that's what, that's real. And it's so important to have that one bite, like the one bite of matzah or the one bite, like people who, right? Just to click that trigger, just to press that button every week in your head that all food comes from Hashem. So you gave me another like whole thing to hold on to. That thank you, because it is very, very important, right? That's the food. That's the food that really we call bread, and that really, that's the food that is like called food, right? Called sustenance. The other thing I always like to say is that when we there's a nickname for money, right? We call it dough. And it's the same thing, right? Like there's a whole shiur about how you can think about the man as parnasa, right? And parnasa, by the way, I heard this. I think trying to think who taught me this. Might be Rav Moshe Tzvi Weinberg, so I want to give him credit. That parnasa doesn't mean being wealthy, right? Parnasa means that you have food on your table. That's exactly right. You have enough to serve. You have like sustenance. That's what it means. Okay, so parnasa, that we have food, that comes from Hashem, and it's important to have that one bite of bread to remember that.
That's exactly what everybody says. You're eating you're right. Not, it's not the opposite. You're eating for the sake of eating.
Right.
You're eating to do the mitzvah. You're eating to be able to make the bracha.
Right. We that's the story with the Ger Rebbe, who talked about like the apple that a person. There are people that eat the apple and therefore they want to eat the apple, so they make the bracha. And then there's another way, which is you want to make the bracha, so you eat the apple, right? And that's really what we should all be doing.
That's why also there's a minhag that you have more snacks on Shabbos to
make more brachas. 100 brachas. Beautiful. Okay, and we'll finish off. Our last piece is the Mea Shiloch, which is the longest piece, which is really where I started with the whole shiur. It actually starts on the front page and then goes on to the back page. Okay, so this is one of my favorite pieces from the Mea Shiloch. I actually was just at his kever I guess it wasn't last week already. It was already a week and a half ago, but Baruch Hashem in Ishbitz. It's a very special place. Okay, he says, Inyan Shalosh Parshiot Hane'emrin Kan. Okay, he brings that there's actually three things that are spoken about in Parshat Behar. Parshas Shemitah, right? Like we said, Parshas Dror Avadim B'Yovel. Okay, it's all part of the Shemitah system, but 7 Shemitahs is 49 years. The 50th year is the Yovel. Okay, that becomes an extra everything on top of it. So then that 6th year actually has to feed 4 years, right? Which is fascinating. And all the slaves go free in the 50th year, the Yovel. Okay, Uparshat Ribit, what's it called? Interest. Thank you very much. Okay. Vehu she'Hashem yisparach mazhir liYisrael shelo yasimu bitchunam b'shum davar hanira le'enei ha'adam sheyuchal livtoach bo. Okay, so he says this is Hashem telling us that you can't put your faith in anything in this physical world. Okay, don't put your faith in the physical world. And he's giving us 3 examples of why you have to only put your faith in Hashem. Okay, what's beyond the physical world, meaning Hashem. Ve'elu hashlosha dvarim shmita ve'yovel ve'ridit hem ba'olam v'shana v'nefesh. Okay, there's concept, we spoke about this I think last year, possibly this year also, that everything in the world has 3 dimensions, and the dimensions that are spoken about in Chassidus are olam, shana, nefesh. Okay, olam means place, okay, space, the physical where you are. Okay, shana means the time when you are, and nefesh means who you are. Okay, so everything has that aspect. meaning like every mitzvah has the where, the when, and the who. Okay. So, like for example, the easiest example is the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Okay, that's the easiest example. The who is the Kohen Gadol, the where is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the when is on Yom Kippur. Okay, and that's so Shabbos, right? Shabbos is every seventh day. The where it is in your home or in your shul, whatever that how you celebrate it, how you take it on, and who is all of us. That mitzvah is incumbent on all of us. Okay, all right. So he says that these three things represent like a paradigm of space, place, time, and person. Ki kinyan sadot b'kramim, okay, the purchase of lands and vineyards. Hu kinyan sheyesh la'adam ba'olam asher yuchal liftoch bo. It seems like when you buy something, right, and this is very different in Eretz Yisrael than in other places, right? It seems like when you buy something in the rest of the world, let's say, you own it, right? You buy a farm in Texas, that's it, you own it, right? I mean, obviously, there are things that can happen. You could, chas v'shalom, there could be, you could lose your money, you could want to move, you could want to sell it, whatever it is. But if none of those things happen, then you own it. And there seems to be some kind of permanence to that. Okay. There seems to be some kind of like, I control this. Okay. And Hashem comes and gives us lots of mitzvahs to say to us, you don't control anything, just so you know. Okay. So here we go. V'tziva Hashem Yisbarach neged zeh mitzvat shmita. Okay. So lest we think that we are in control of this land, okay, Hashem gives us the mitzvah of shmita. Hainu shelo yasim ha'adam bitchono bahem v'yira ki laHashem hem. Right? Don't put your trust in that. You don't really control that. It really belongs to Hashem. And every seventh year, you are required to manifest that, to express that by not planting and plowing. Ki b'shnat hashmita en la'adam shum hakarat kinyan b'kinyano v'yira ki laHashem ha'aretz. Because in that seventh year, a person does not own that land. They have no control over the food that grows wild on that land, right? Like we actually, Baruch Hashem, the fact that we live here, we actually see this, right? A person that has a fruit tree in their yard, right? On the year of Shemitah, that's it. That fruit is hefker. Anyone can come into that person's yard and take the fruit. They have to be able to, right? In fact, people who have gates have to actually put up a sign that says there's fruit available, come inside. Because lest we think that the gate symbolizes ownership and that no one else can come in, right? So this is like a reminder, a reset. I don't actually own this land. It really belongs to Hashem. V'neged havtacha sheyesh la'adam bizman. Okay, and then we have the reminder in terms of time, that also time is not ours. It's probably very obvious to all of us that time is not ours. Okay, but still, hainu sheyesh la'mifteach sheyasef hon mechir hazman hainu sheikach ribit. Okay, so ribit, interest, is something that is sort of like rests on time. Okay, meaning, right, that's the rule of interest is like you pay the loan back by this time with this much extra, but if you can't pay it back by that time, then you pay it back by that time with more interest, right? Like if you're 30 days over, then the amount that you owe increases. Okay, so each day has a value set to it. Amra Torah al tikach mito nesech ki ikar nesech ki ikar ribit hu shelokech mechir hazman kemamar hagamara. Okay, so you're not allowed to take a person who is owed money is actually not allowed to sort of like cheat the person that owes them money by like not asking for it back, and then saying like, oh, you've owed it already to me for 5 days. That's an extra 5 days of interest, right? They have to like demand it back when it's due, or they can't delay for their own benefit. Put it that way. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman said, Kalala de Ribita, Kol Agar Netar Le Asur. Okay, when you try to collect it, like you're trying to gather it, that's Asur. Okay, you're using time as a weapon. Okay, and time doesn't belong to you. Can't put value on time. We do put value on time, right? Meaning we go to a job, and if your job pays a certain amount per hour, right, then you see those hours as worth that much, right? But Hashem comes and says, like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to think that way. You have to understand that all time is mine, basically, okay? And you're going to do it, and that also has to do with Shabbos, okay? He says, like, that when you do things is based on the mitzvahs, not based on when you want to do it. Okay. V'neged kinyan sheyesh la'adam b'nefashot avadim. Okay, so then there's person, right? Meaning, we don't really have a concept of this, but like slaves that they used to have. Okay, even eved ivri. V'yachol livtoach bahem sheishtamesh bahem l'chol trachav. And if you have, maybe these days people have like someone who comes to their house or something like that, or I guess a bad boss would be like this, right? That I can use the people however I want to use them. Okay, chas v'shalom, we shouldn't think that. Neged zeh tziva Hashem yisparach mitzvah dror avadim beyovel. So against this, to guard against this, Hashem gave us the mitzvah of freeing slaves in the Yovel. Hainu sheyireh adam she'en lo kinyan begufam v'tzarich l'shalcham l'chavshi. So I don't own this person forever. I have to let them free. V'gam be'et hayotam avadim tziva Hashem shelo yarda bo paparach. Right, and even when I do have sort of like a say over what they're doing, when they are working for me, I can't abuse them, right? I can't put unwieldy work on them. I don't own this body. This is a person. I don't own them. Okay, so the concept of Yovel, of freeing slaves in Yovel, helps us to understand that. That's what he's saying. Okay, that all these mitzvahs help plant the seed of the idea that I don't control, I'm not in charge of the land. I don't own the land. I'm not in charge of time. I can't control time, and I'm not in charge of people. I can't control people.
Isn't it also that Yovel that people that belong to you also?
Right, but he said, yes, it's also true. He's using it as an example of time, but people.
Own the land. Everything goes back to what said.
Right. Right. So that's why I was saying that, like in Israel, right, when you sign I actually don't own a house, so I don't know, but I think that when you sign it's like a 99-year lease, right? Like that's the idea. Someone said to me, when does that, what happens in the 100th year? But I think do you have to re-sign your mortgages or something like that? I don't know. Like the buying of a house, right? Doesn't it have like, then elsewhere? I think in all of Israel, no? That you don't really, I thought that was on I think in Efrat also people said that they have that on their contract. You can't really, because Hashem owns it. Right, it says, I think it says 99 years. I think that's the idea. I just don't know what legally happens after that. So there is some kind of wording loophole where it's not like contracts that you sign in the rest of the world. I'm pretty sure that's how it's.
Yeah, in the time of the school,
right.
Everything goes back to the nachalot and whatever's supposed.
Right.
So
okay, and then he says, "V'tziva Hashem yisparach elu shlosha hamitzvot," and Hashem gave us these 3 mitzvot specifically. Hainu she'nir'eh sha'haolam v'hashana v'hanefesh en shum miftach la'adam bahem. Okay, you can't trust, you can't control, you have no security over these things. Rak Hashem hu mafteach adam. Okay, just really Hashem is the only one that we can put our trust into, our faith into. V'lazeh siyem achar parshiot ha'elu, and that's why it says after these parshiot, it says in our parsha, Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzitzi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim latet lachem et eretz Canaan. Right, this is why I am Hashem who took you out of the land of Mitzrayim to give to you the land of Canaan. And he does this interesting play on words here. He says, "V'hu shelo yidmeh ha'adam b'nafsho shenitma'atu v'hashpa'otav b'meh shenesru lo kol hadvarim ha'eleh." And we shouldn't think, this is so that we shouldn't imagine that Hashem's like that in stopping us from doing these things, that Hashem is sort of like lessening his impact. Okay, that why? Lazen ne'amar Hashem, lazen ne'amar ani Hashem Elokeichem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. That's why it starts with Eretz Mitzrayim. What do we know about Mitzrayim? Perush hatovot she'einam b'kedusha hem b'meitzar v'tzimtzum. Okay, that all the things that are not kedusha, all the ways of living that are not kedusha, are constricting, are limiting, and that's from the word Mitzrayim, right? So if we live in a way of Mitzrayim, then we rely on the laws of nature, and we rely on our, our thought, our misguided understanding that we control things, like in Mitzrayim, right? The example is always given that in Mitzrayim they don't look up. They didn't at the time, right? They didn't look up for the rain, for the harvest. The Nile overflowed, and the air, and then they directed the waters of the Nile once a year, regular, like clockwork. The Nile overflowed. There was a season for it. It happened every year the same exact way. And they were able to use those waters to water the fields, and that's why that was like the Fertile Crescent, right? Okay, that it was reliable. They could assume that it was going to happen, and therefore they had no connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They thought, okay, this is how nature works. What? Right, exactly. This is what's going to happen every year. And they were like, that was their bitachon, right? That was their security. That was their feeling of, we have a sense of control over everything. And that is actually limiting, because they don't have control over it, right? There could be a year that, now whatever, it doesn't happen anymore anyway, but that's not how it's supposed to be. We aren't actually in control. And we should know that we're not in control, but we should know that someone is in control, who has control over everything, and we can rely on him. So thinking that we have control is a way of Mitzrayim. It's a way of limiting ourselves. Latet lachem et Eretz Canaan. But what is Hashem taking us out to do? To give us Eretz Canaan. Hainu hatavot she'Hashem yisbarach yashpia lanu yiyu b'kedusha. That the way that the things that Hashem is giving us, and that are flowing like into us, are kedusha, are through holiness. V'nuchal litpashet bahem, and you can be expansive with them. Ki Hashem yisbarach yanchil tova b'kedusha nachala bli metzarim. Because Hashem's way is a way of expansiveness without constriction. And Canaan there's always a play on words with Canaan, that it's hachna'ah, right? Hachna'ah means humility, okay? That this is a land that inspires humility and submission, thank you. That we know that who's really in charge? Hashem. But when Hashem is really in charge, we get much, much bigger brachas and much better brachas than when we think that we're in charge, right? So like all of the if I say like whatever benefits I get from thinking that I did this and this is my work and I put this whole thing together, right? Those benefits are going to be limited because it's coming from like a place of small-mindedness and this is what I can do, right? When we attach ourselves to the infinite one, so then the benefit is infinite, and we can't really even measure it. It's not like something that you can look at on a spreadsheet. It's something that makes a person a bigger person. And that's really what the purpose of all these shiurim is, right? Is that to like see deeper into our world, right? If we chas v'shalom, that we should look at the news and think that that this is where the world is going, and this is because the news is very scary, and it's so bizarre what's going on out there. So I really like learning Torah and learning Chassidus and learning that really Hashem is inside of all of this. It gives us space to breathe, because otherwise we think like, oh my God, there's really no hope. Chas v'shalom, chas v'shalom, chas v'chalila. There is hope. There's always hope, right? Where Hashem is in control. Hashem is in charge. What it looks like from the outside, I don't know, right? That we see with our physical eyes. But when we tap into what it actually is, what actually is happening on the inside, then that gives us an ability to keep on moving forward. It gives us the ability to breathe. It gives us the ability to say, like, I know this looks crazy, but it's going somewhere. It's all going somewhere, and wherever it's going is going to be for the best. Ezrat Hashem. Thank you.